Hello, night owls. I am Dusky Nights, and I bring you real-life horror stories that will help you sleep, or maybe keep you awake. But before we start, tell me in the comments, where are you watching from, and what time is it right now? Also, do not forget to like this video and subscribe to the channel.
Reality is fragile. What you see and what you hear aren't always the truth. There are things that exist beyond our understanding, things that watch from the corners of our vision. These tales will challenge your perception, blurring the lines between what's real and what's something else. Listen closely and question everything. I have never been a believer in the supernatural. In fact, I have spent most of my life rationalizing eerie events, finding the most logical explanations, and dismissing ghost stories as products of overactive imaginations. But last night something happened that I cannot explain. And the worst part, the only proof I had of it disappeared. I have not sleepwalked since I was a child. My parents used to tell me stories of how I would wander the house at night, sometimes standing in the hallway staring at nothing. They would gently guide me back to bed, and in the morning I would remember nothing. Then, one night it just stopped. But a few weeks ago, as I drifted into sleep, I felt something strange, an odd awareness. Right at the moment I started dreaming, I felt myself sit up. It was subtle at first, just a hazy sensation, but enough to make me wonder. When I woke up, I asked my wife if she had noticed anything. She had not. In fact, she said she had the best sleep she had in years. I let it go until it happened again and again. Each time I felt the same thing. The instant my dreams began, my body would move. It became unsettling, gnawing at the back of my mind. So I did something I never thought I would do. I set up our Ring camera in the bedroom. It was my wife's idea. If I was moving around in my sleep, the motion sensor would catch it. We would have answers. Or so I thought. That night, I tried to stay awake, but sleep came faster than expected. The next morning, I opened the Ring app, expecting nothing more than a few seconds of footage of me tossing and turning. But what I saw made my stomach drop. The video started with me lying in bed, my wife undisturbed beside me. Then, without warning, I sat up. Not groggy, not slow, bolt upright, unnaturally fast. My eyes were wide open, gleaming in the infrared light. But something was off. The longer I watched, the more wrong it felt. My face was blurred. Everything else in the video was clear, high definition, but my face looked distorted, like an old, low-resolution image. I sat still for 10 seconds. Then, without hesitation, I stood on the bed and stripped off my clothes. The movement was fluid, too smooth, too deliberate. My wife did not stir, despite the bed shifting violently beneath me. That was impossible. She is a light sleeper. Then I walked straight towards the camera. And that is when the fear truly set in. As I got closer, my face never came into focus. My body was crystal clear, every muscle movement, every shadow, but my features remained a blur, like something was masking them. I reached the door, opened it, and then I stepped out of frame. The video continued for another minute, showing my wife still sleeping soundly, as if nothing had happened. Then it ended. I stared at my phone, my heart pounding. I tapped to replay the video. It was gone, vanished from the app. Not deleted, not stored elsewhere, just erased. I searched everywhere, tried every method to recover it. Nothing. I have not told my wife. I do not want to scare her. But I checked the house. Everything was locked. Nothing was out of place. It was as if I had never left the room. I am setting up the camera again tonight, positioning it at a better angle. Maybe I will see where I went. Maybe I will find proof that it was all in my head. Or maybe I will see something worse. The next night, I stayed awake longer, staring at the blinking light of the camera. I willed myself to remain conscious, to fight against whatever force was taking me. Eventually, exhaustion won. I slipped into sleep, my mind drifting into nothingness. And then the nightmare began. This time, I could feel myself move. It was as if I was trapped in my own body, watching from behind my eyes. I sat up again, but this time I turned to face my wife. I could see her peaceful, steady breathing, her face serene. But I felt nothing, no recognition, no attachment, just an overwhelming compulsion to stand. I climbed out of bed, but I did not walk to the door. I crawled. My hands and feet moved soundlessly across the floor, my body unnatural, insect-like. The camera was in front of me, its tiny red light blinking. I crawled closer, the angle distorting my limbs in the dim glow. And then I reached out. My hand moved toward the camera, fingers stretching toward the lens. Static. When I woke up, my phone was in my hand. The Ring app was open, and the video was gone. Panic surged through me. I scrambled out of bed, checking every door, every window. Everything was still locked. My wife was still asleep. The world was unchanged, but something was wrong. My hands were covered in dirt. The faint scent of soil clung to my fingertips. My feet were damp, speckled with mud. I checked outside. The backyard looked normal at first glance, but then I saw them. Footprints, leading away from our bedroom window and disappearing into the woods beyond the fence. Tonight, I will not sleep. I will watch, and if I move again, I will follow myself, because whatever is taking over my body is trying to go somewhere, and I need to know where. I stayed too late at the flea market, and now I know why they close at 3 p.m. I've always loved flea markets. There's something about them. Things left behind, forgotten, repurposed. That's why I was thrilled when I moved to Ashbrook and heard about Cooper's Market. It sat just outside town, tucked against a stretch of dense forest. It was open Tuesday to Sunday from dawn until 3 p.m. without exception. I assumed the closing hours were caused by a city ordinance, or just something people had always done, but the more I asked, the more people avoided answering. Vendors packed up quickly, customers left without lingering, and by 3:05, the place was abandoned, as if it had never been there at all. The market was just down the road from my house. I'd been a few times, usually in the mornings, but I'd never stayed until closing. I wanted to know why they closed so early. Now I do. The air changed as closing time approached. Vendors stopped humoring browsers, shifting their attention to breaking down their stalls. No one told stragglers to leave, but the message was clear. I lingered at an antique stall, pretending to examine a set of brass keys. The woman behind the table, thin, weathered, watched me with an unreadable expression. She was wrapping small porcelain dolls in tissue paper, her hands moving fast. "Hey, how's it going?" I asked, trying to sound casual. She barely glanced up from the doll in her hands. "I'm doing great, sweetie." Her voice was kind but distant, polite, in a way that felt automatic. She just kept wrapping, her fingers moving fast. "I was just wondering, why does everyone pack up so early? Is it a city ordinance or something?" Her hands stilled for half a second. When she spoke again, her voice was colder. "If you're smart, you won't ask." She folded the last piece of tissue paper over the doll, tucking it in tightly. "We need to leave." She didn't look at me, just kept working, the rustling of paper suddenly sharper, more hurried. I hid inside an old camper van near the back of the lot, crouched behind dusty furniture. Through a small window, I watched the last vendors pull out onto the road in a slow procession, dust rising behind them. The lot was empty. For a long time, nothing happened. I sat still, listening to the wind move through the trees, the rustle of old tarps shifting in the breeze. The sun was still high, the air still warm. I pulled out my phone, scrolling mindlessly to pass the time, occasionally glancing up to check my surroundings. Everything looked the same still, normal. I began to wonder if I'd fallen for some elaborate local prank. Time passed, maybe a couple of hours, maybe more. My phone had died after being on it for so long. I can't be sure of the time exactly, but it was starting to get dark. The footsteps came first, soft, like someone walking barefoot through dry leaves, then closer, deliberate. A slow, cautious approach. I held my breath, straining to see outside the camper. Nothing. The lot was still empty. But the feeling was stronger now, like being watched through a window I couldn't find. At some point the whispers began, not words, not exactly. Just a sound threaded through the air, somewhere between wind and speech. My name surfaced in it, over and over, stretched and pulled apart like something spoken through water. I stayed curled behind the furniture, pressing myself into the tightest space I could find. It felt like I was there forever, Then, through the corner of a window, I saw it. Thin, motionless. At first I thought it was a vendor who had forgotten to leave, but it was too still. The longer I looked, the more unnatural it seemed. Its limbs too long, its posture too rigid, like something standing the way it thought a person should. I didn't move. Neither did it. I ducked lower, wedging myself between an old dresser and a rusted mini-fridge. The metal was cold against my back. I told myself I could wait it out, that whatever this was, it would go. Then it took a step, slow, deliberate, not searching. It already knew where I was. I clenched my teeth, forcing myself to stay still. Through the thin gap beneath the camper door, I could see its feet, long, pale, standing just outside. A pause, then the lightest sound. So faint I almost didn't notice it. A slow, deliberate tapping. Not a knock, just the bare scrape of a fingernail against the metal, testing the surface. It dragged downward, slow and careful, then lifted, only to tap again, softer this time, almost thoughtful, like it was waiting. Minutes passed, maybe more. The tapping stopped. The air sat heavy, thick with silence. Then, from nowhere, a warmth stirred the back of my neck. Not a breeze, not movement, just heat, faint, damp. My fingers curled against my leg. The camper door was shut. The window was latched. I stayed still. The warmth came again, closer this time. I felt a shift in the van, fabric dragging against wood, a weight settling. Then a breath, deep, controlled, right against my skin. Before I could react, something pressed against my spine. Light at first, just the barest touch through my shirt. Then a nail, jagged and slow, tracing its way up my back, higher and higher. I ran. I jumped into bed, pulling the blankets around me. Home felt safe. My boyfriend would be off soon. His shift ran from 2 to 10, just a couple of hours, and I wouldn't be alone. I tried to calm my breathing. The bedroom was quiet, except for the sound of my cat, Henry, snoring at the foot of the bed. Then, a few light taps on the dresser. I was never alone. I grabbed Henry and ran. My keys were still in my pocket. I didn't turn the lights off. I didn't look back. I just got in my car and drove. The dresser was still shut. Now I'm at my brother's house. Henry is curled up beside me, and I can still feel my pulse in my throat. It's late now, and I am so tired after today. So I'm going to hop off. I'll update everyone soon if anything happens. Oh, yeah. And I called my boyfriend. I told him not to go home. Told him to come straight here. I don't know if I can go back. Would it even make a difference? The old hospital stood at the edge of town, a crumbling relic of the past. Its walls, once pristine white, were now stained with decay, and its windows, long shattered, gaped like empty eye sockets. No one dared enter after dark, for stories of ghostly whispers and shadowy figures had plagued the place for years. But to Liam, A skeptic with a passion for debunking urban legends, it was the perfect challenge. Armed with a flashlight and a camera, he stepped through the rusted entrance, his breath misting in the cold air. The scent of mildew and something more putrid clung to the walls like an unwelcome presence. His footsteps echoed through the vacant corridors as he ventured deeper inside. The peeling paint curled like dead skin, revealing layers of forgotten time beneath. Old patient records lay scattered across the floor, their ink smudged with age. A wheelchair sat abandoned in the middle of the hall, its wheels rusted and motionless. He swept his flashlight across the room and saw remnants of a life left behind. Broken IV stands, toppled medicine bottles, and the eerie remnants of a child's toy, half buried under debris. But it wasn't until he reached the surgery wing that the air thickened with something more than dust and decay. A sudden rustling sound made him freeze. It came from a room marked restricted access. His rational mind told him it was probably a rat, but something about the sound, it was too deliberate, too calculated. He swallowed hard and pushed open the door, the hinges groaning in protest. Inside, the temperature dropped noticeably. The room was filled with rusted surgical tools, their edges dulled with time, but still gleaming under his flashlight. A gurney sat in the center, its surface stained dark with something he didn't want to imagine. That's when he saw it. Long, jagged scratch marks trailing across the floor, leading to the far wall. He took slow, measured steps toward the markings, his breath shallow. The flashlight flickered, the batteries struggling against the consuming darkness. Then, a whisper, faint, barely audible, but unmistakable. "Help me!" Liam spun around, his heart pounding. The room was empty. He turned back to the wall, his fingers tracing the scratches. They weren't random. They formed words. "Don't let him out." His skin prickled with cold fear. Who was him? And why had someone carved this desperate warning? Before he could react, a loud crash sounded from behind him. The wheelchair in the hall had tipped over on its own. His instincts screamed at him to leave, but his curiosity, his need to prove there was nothing here, kept him rooted in place. That's when the door slammed shut. His flashlight died instantly, plunging him into suffocating darkness. He fumbled for his phone, the screen casting a dim glow. In its faint light, he saw something that made his blood run cold. Footsteps forming in the dust, moving toward him. But no one was there. A low, guttural breathing filled the room. It wasn't his own. He could feel it, something standing just beyond his vision, watching. A chill brushed his neck, like ice-cold fingers trailing against his skin. Then, a voice, rasping and broken. "You should not have come." He bolted for the door, yanking at the handle, but it wouldn't budge. The breathing grew louder, closer. A shape flickered in the shadows, a towering figure with hollow, sunken eyes and an impossibly wide grin. Its limbs twitched unnaturally, as if controlled by invisible strings. Liam's screams caught in his throat as the thing lunged. Cold, skeletal fingers clamped around his wrist. He yanked free, stumbling backward, his phone slipping from his grasp and smashing against the ground. Total darkness swallowed him whole. He felt the air shift, the presence closing in. His pulse pounded against his skull. Then, suddenly, the door burst open on its own. Without thinking, he sprinted through it, crashing into the hallway, gasping for breath. The hospital seemed different now. The decay was still there, but something felt off. He turned a corner, expecting to find the exit, but instead, he was met with endless corridor stretching into the void. His own footprints in the dust had vanished, as if he had never walked there at all. Panic gripped his chest. He ran, turning blindly down hall after hall, but the building had become a maze, shifting and twisting around him. A laughter, deep and guttural, echoed from the walls. "You can't leave," it mocked. "You are already mine." He forced himself to stop, to think. He wasn't going to let fear control him. He retraced his steps back to the surgery room. The message on the floor had changed. "He's behind you." Cold breath prickled against his ear. He spun around, but the thing was already there, its face inches from his own. A scream died in his throat as darkness swallowed him whole. Days later, authorities found Liam's camera near the hospital entrance, its footage corrupted. His body was never recovered. The hospital remains abandoned, its doors rusted shut. But locals swear they sometimes hear desperate whispers in the wind, a plea for help, a warning to stay away. And if you listen closely, you might still hear Liam screaming. Did this story send chills down your spine? If you love eerie tales like this, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more terrifying stories. What would you do if you were trapped in this haunted hospital? Let me know in the comments below.